Hi y'all, it's Andrea over at Sewspire.com, and I am here to kick off our Sew for Someone You Know last minute holiday gift series here at Sewspire. This is going to be an epic month. I'm going to be coming to you with loads of last minute gift ideas. There's not going to be any rhyme or reason to when I post that content, so make sure you take a chance right now, click subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single tutorial this month. So for this project, we're going to get started right away. You're going to need some quilt weight cotton fabric. I have some pretty tulip pink. I have a complimentary PDF for you that you can download. Follow the link in the description to get your copy. There will be additional PDFs for our projects this month, so go ahead and sign up for my mailing list so you don't miss out on those as well. So you will need a piece of fusible fleece, which is 3 by 8, 2 cuts of the cotton fabric, same measurements, 1 cut that is 2 by 9, 1 cut that is 2 by 2. Then you're going to need a 1/2 inch swivel fob and a 1/2 inch D-ring and 1 snap set. So what I am going to do first is fuse my fleece to the exterior, and while I am at the iron, I am also going to be pressing my strap for the swivel fob. I'm going to press that in half long ways, then I'm going to open that up and bring those outer edges inward to meet on that center press line, and then I'm going to fold that over to create the 4-ply strap, which will fit right through this 1/2 inch swivel fob perfectly. I'm going to use the exact same process, folding in half, bringing the outer edges inward, and folding that over to create the little tab which attaches to this holder and has the D-ring on it, which the swivel fob then in turn attaches to. Okay, so let me press up and I will be right back. Okay, I have fused the fleece to the back of the exterior, and I have my little strap for the D-ring and my longer strap for the swivel fob pressed. Now I want to stitch down that open edge of both of these straps just using a very scant seam allowance. I'm just going to align that fabric with the right hand edge of my presser foot. This presser foot is a 1/4 inch presser foot. So there's the longer strap, and then I just have this little short strap for the tab. And both of those are done. Now I want to thread my 1/2 inch D-ring onto the shorter strap. I'm going to align the raw edges and stitch as close as I can get to the hardware without striking that hardware to keep that strap nice and level. I like to back stitch on this so that nothing shifts. If you have a little pair of snips there, it's nice to trim up any stray threads with that. Okay, so I have that prepared. Now I want to thread the longer strap onto the swivel fob, and I'm going to align those raw edges nice and even, and then using a 1/4 inch stitch right across those raw edges. And then you can go ahead and trim that up even more. Get rid of as many of those stray threads as you can, and then flip that strap around so that that raw edge is hidden, and you have something that looks like this. And then what we want to do is bring that fob down to sit on that inner raw edge, which is now on the inside of this, and then come across there again as close as you can get to that hardware, which works out to be about 1/4 inch for me with this foot, and back stitch across that to reinforce. Another option is to install a rivet as opposed to stitching. I know not all of you own a cam press, so I am going to stitch as opposed to install the rivet. But if I had to choose and I were making this for a gift, I would use the rivet just because it adds an additional element of quality to it, in my opinion. So now I have a cute little hand strap for my ear pod holder, and I'm going to set that aside. Now what I want to do is bring over the exterior, which remember is backed with the fleece. I want this little cat to end up on my flap. So he is going to be at the top upside down temporarily because this is the flap there, and I think he's going to look so cute peeping over on the flap. So the D-ring is going to get positioned 3 inches down on this material. So measure 3 inches down. It doesn't really matter if it's the right or the left hand side. So if you have a clear preference, go for it. I have my 1/4 inch stitching there, which is a nice guide for me. I'm going to bump it in just a smidgen so that I can catch this in my seam allowance as I'm stitching around. So I'm coming in about 1/4 inch there, and there's a good 3/8 of an inch overhang, which is wonderful. I want to stitch this in place so it doesn't shift. I'm staying within that 1/4 inch so that my stitching doesn't show when it's finished. Then I want to take this lining piece of fabric, fold that in half, and using my scissors, I'm just going to ever so slightly angle that top edge, which is going to give the flap a little bit of interest with the angle there. I do not want to angle this exterior piece because it has been my experience with one piece of fabric not being interfaced. Even if you clip really well, this fabric shifts, and once you have those tiny angles in place, it is very difficult to get that to line up, and then you may not be satisfied with your finished look. So now take your angled interior and position that right sides facing on the exterior piece, which has the little D-ring tab and the fusible fleece. So we have our interior right sides facing, our exterior right sides facing, and then the bottom layer is the fusible fleece. And I'm going to put a couple clips around that to hold everything in place, and then using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm going to stitch from the straight short edge up the long edge, sink my needle and pivot across my little angle, pivot across the top, pivot across the second angle, and back down this opposite edge. I will be back stitching at the bottom here on both sides. I'm going to leave this short straight edge open to turn. So that worked out very well for me, and I had minimal shifting because I was not trying to line up those two little ends. So if you have struggled in the past with getting these angles like that even, a little trick that I like to use is to count the number of stitches that are in there. So on this side I have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. And on this side I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches, despite my best effort to keep the seam allowance aligned. So I'm going to come back in on this short edge and stitch across there again and get that extra stitch in and then true it up along the top. And that will help my flap look like it's more symmetrical. So I'll just sink the needle right where that stitching starts. And I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now I know it's time to pivot. And I'll just true that up with that straight line, and now I should have a really nice flap. So I do want to go ahead now and trim up even more because this is a small piece and we don't want a lot of bulk. So I think I'm coming in here close to 1/8 of an inch from that seam. And it is okay too to trim up the overhang on the D-ring. And so that's what I end up with here. And now I'm going to very carefully turn this right side out, poke out those corners for the flap, and give it a nice press. Okay, I have thoroughly pressed my holder here. I have taken those raw edges and turned them inward at that short end 1/4 inch, and then you want this nice and straight. So if you have any doubt, measure that to make sure that it's nice and straight. Now the next step is to install our snap along that short open edge. So we're going to come down 1 inch from that, and I like to keep the decorative head obviously on the outside of the flap, so I'm going to be just using the prong on the inside here. And this snap will need to be installed so that it is on the exterior at center along that short side. So the fusible fleece should offer you plenty of stability with those prongs, but if you have any doubt, add another little piece of interfacing there. So come down 1 inch at center. I've used my nail to poke out those prongs. I'm going to let the female portion of this snap sit right on top of those prongs, and then I'm going to give that a few good whacks with my hammer to set that. I will not be able to have this felt mat underneath because I won't be able to get enough impact with that. So I'm going to move just to the mat. And it doesn't take much to set that in place, but it is important that it's in between those layers because you would not want that hardware to scratch the contents of the case because this is a very snug fit. So the next step for me is to stitch across this opening here. I'm going to use 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'll be back stitching on both ends. Okay, so now this is what I have. One portion of the snap attached, the D-ring towards the top. I know that this is my flap because it's angled and it has my cute little cat on it. So now I want to fold up the bottom where I installed the snap, and I want to fold that up just so it rests right at that D-ring. I'm going to keep those edges aligned nice and tidy. And I want to start stitching at this right hand side here where the fold begins, and I'm going to back stitch well because that's a stress point. I'm using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, so a very, very scant seam allowance to stitch to the fold and back stitch. Then I'm going to break the thread and come over and start at this edge on the fold, back stitch, and traverse all the way around my flap until I meet up with the stitching where I started. You do not want to stitch across the fold at the base. It will create compression here, and then your earbuds will not fit in there, or AirPods, I think they call these. They call these AirPods. The little case will not fit in there. So do not stitch across the fold. So starting here on the right hand side, an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, as skinny as you can go. Then break that thread and flip to the opposite side, starting at the fold, same narrow seam allowance. If you like, you can back stitch at that little lip. Okay, so now the actual project is formed. Feel free to test fit now. And it's an absolutely perfect fit. I love that. It's so cute. It's just the most darling case. It could be good for a lot of things. Okay, now we need to test fit where this flap is going to hit. This is very important that you have the contents inside when you test fit, because if you install this snap in the wrong spot, it's going to change how much can fit inside of this. So we have the decorative portion of the snap remains here, and then the male portion. So I just want to eyeball this where that snap is, and it's very close to the end of this flap, and obviously it needs to be at center. So I'm going to get those prongs in place and press those up with my fingernail there. And then at this point, I can go ahead and remove the contents, because I don't want to damage them, and 2, I already have the snap in place, so I know where it goes. Then you can install the male portion of the snap in the base of this, and bring over that top part and let those prongs rest inside that snap. Again, you're going to have to transfer this to a hard surface. Make sure that nothing shifts, and then you can give that snap a little whack with your hammer. If you're worried about damaging the decorative portion of the snap, you could put a little piece of fabric on top of that before you hammer. I have a nice flat head on this hammer, so it usually doesn't cause any damage. Then I like to turn that over and a few whacks on the back. And then, of course, test that and make sure that nothing shifted and your snap is securely installed. Oh, it's so darn cute. I love that little cat. I don't have a cat. I used to have cats, but I don't have a cat now, just dogs, but they sure are darling. Okay, then install or test fit. Insert your contents inside of there, and it's truly a perfect fit for these. And then fold that over, and voila, you have the most darling little handmade earpod case. And this is for the original earpods, but if you have the larger ones, You can use the same measurements for the height. You're going to have to increase the width on those. And if I can get my hands on a pair of the Pros, I think they call them, this month, I will give you the measurements for that as well, okay? So just know if you're using the Pros, you have to make it a little wider, but you can use the same measurements for the height. Then this swivel fob just hooks right on there, and you can attach this to a belt loop inside of a purse. You could even just simply carry it. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I certainly had fun designing this for you. I want to thank Sandy. She's a Sewspire patron for the inspiration for this. I hope Sandy is pleased as well. If you have special requests for holiday gift project for the month of December, drop that in the comments as well, and I will see what I can do. So I hope you have fun sewing for someone you know, and I will catch you in the next video. Don't forget to click like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for sewing with me today, everyone. Hope you have an awesome day.